So since February 28th, the United States military has struck more than 9,000 targets inside Iran.
Yeah, which is just a staggering number to even try to process.
Right. I mean, if you break that down, you're looking at like 375 combat missions every single day.
Right.
That is about 15 missions an hour.
It's just this relentless 24-hour-a-day logistical machine. I mean, when politicians demand immediate results and the military unleashes its full capability, like this, the sheer velocity of the destruction is just, it's wild.
It really is.
We were watching this heavily compressed timeline of warfare that is almost difficult to wrap your head around.
Totally. Well, welcome to today's deep dive. We are jumping into a newly released Patreon post by the publication KULT.
Right, and they've curated and analyzed some recent fact sheets from the Department of Defense.
Yep, and U.S. Central Command, or CENTCOM. They're essentially tracking the first 24 days of Operation Epic Fury.
Which is just a massive amount of data to sift through.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to help you, the listener, really cut through the noise of the news cycle right now. We are going to unpack the mechanics of this massive campaign, the devastating human cost on the ground, and the incredibly confusing diplomatic signals flying back and forth.
Because to really grasp what is happening here, we need to look at the intersection of that raw military data, the mechanics of modern weaponry, and the broader geopolitical chess game.
Exactly. But really quickly, before we get into the mechanics of this, I do need to share a quick but crucial note.
Oh, yeah, good point.
We are looking at some highly charged military and geopolitical updates here involving current U.S. and Iranian leadership. So I want to make crystal clear to you listening that we are not taking political sides here.
Right. Absolutely not.
And we are definitely not endorsing the viewpoints of the military figures or the politicians mentioned in these reports.
Yeah.
Our goal is strictly to impartially unpack the facts, the statistics, and the statements exactly as they are reported in the source text we have.
Exactly. We're just looking at the data.
Right. Okay, let's unpack this. Because the headline numbers from CNTCOM don't just tell us what is happening, right? They tell us how it is happening.
Right.
Like 9,000 targets hit through 9,000 combat sorties.
And CNTCOM's stated goal actually provides the strategic blueprint for those 9,000 sorties. They announce their forces are, quote, striking targets to dismantle the Iranian regime's security apparatus, prioritizing locations that pose an imminent threat.
And the source breaks down that target list. And honestly, it reads like a masterclass in dismantling a state's military infrastructure.
Oh, for sure.
They are hitting the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC's command and control centers.
Right, the brain of the operation.
Exactly. They are taking out intelligence facilities, ballistic missile sites, air defense networks, weapons production bunkers, and even drone manufacturing plants.
What's fascinating here is the underlying strategy of that specific mix of targets. I mean, in modern warfare, a military doesn't just drop bombs randomly to cause damage, right?
There's a specific logic to it.
Exactly. They are trying to induce a systemic cascading collapse of the adversary's capabilities.
Okay, how so?
Well, by targeting the IOGC command centers and the intelligence hubs, you are effectively blinding the adversary.
Yeah.
You sever the nervous system entirely.
Ah, I see. Because if the generals in the command centers can't communicate with the missile batteries in the field,
right,
or if they can't even see the incoming threats on their radar because the intel is down, those missile batteries are effectively useless anyway.
Exactly. You cut off the head, and simultaneously you hit the weapons production bunkers and the drone manufacturing facilities.
So you halt the supply chain.
Right. You blind them, and at the exact same time, you ensure they cannot reload. The goal is to paralyze the security apparatus from both the operational side and the logistical side.
Just locking them in a state of chaos.
Pretty much.
I mean, the strategy makes complete logical sense.
Yeah.
But executing a campaign that blinds a massive entrenched military force like that requires just an unprecedented array of firepower.
Oh, absolutely.
The hardware listed in this report is just a massive alphabet soup of military might.
It really is.
You have your bombers, right? The B-1, the B-2, and the B-52 bombers.
The heavy hitters.
Yeah, then you have a whole fleet of fighter jets, F-15s, F-22s, F-35s, and F-18s.
Plus the unmanned stuff.
Right, MQ-9 drones. And then on the naval side, you've got aircraft carriers, nuclear-powered submarines, and guided missile destroyers.
It's massive.
Plus the defensive networks like THUF and Patriot systems. I mean, it's just everything.
Right, but you don't just send all those platforms into a combat zone at once, right? It is a highly choreographed ecosystem.
How does that actually look in practice?
Well, every single piece of machinery has a distinct role. So the F-22 stealth fighters, they go in first to completely clear the skies of enemy aircraft.
Right, establish dominance.
Exactly. And once the airspace is contested and won, the MQ-9 drones loiter high above, providing real-time intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. They are literally serving as the eyes for the commanders back at base.
While the B-2 stealth bombers slip past whatever is left of the radar systems to crack open those deeply buried subterranean weapons bunkers.
Exactly. And while all of that offensive maneuvering is happening, you have the defensive umbrella operating simultaneously.
Like the PAE system.
Right, THAAD, which stands for Terminal High Altitude Area Defense. That is positioned to intercept incoming ballistic missiles during their final terminal phase of flight.
Okay.
Meanwhile, the Patriot missile batteries handle the lower-tier airspace, shooting down shorter-range threats and drones. It is essentially a multi-domain symphony of destruction.
Wow. And bringing that massive ecosystem to bear yielded a very specific historic result on the water.
Yeah, the naval data is crazy.
So in a March 21st video update, CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper stated that U.S. forces, quote, maintain air superiority over Iran.
Right.
But he also reported on the maritime impact. And he confirmed the destruction or damage of more than 140 Iranian naval vessels, including both ships and submarines.
I want to focus on Admiral Cooper's direct quote here because the historical context is vital. Okay.
He described these naval losses as the largest single Navy kill over a 3-week period since World War II.
Wait, since World War II?
Yeah.
I mean, think about the difference in how warfare looked then versus now.
It's totally different.
Right, in the 1940s, a naval kill of that magnitude involved massive armadas slugging it out across the ocean, trading artillery fire for days on end.
Right, just brutal close-quarter stuff.
Yeah, and today, destroying 140 ships is an algorithmic over-the-horizon operation. It's driven by precision strikes from aircraft and submarines that are miles and miles away.
It is the difference between a brawl and a surgical procedure, really.
Yeah.
The sheer lethality of modern precision-guided munitions means an entire fleet can be neutralized without the opposing navies ever even coming into visual contact.
But wait, if a nation loses 140 ships and submarines, and Admiral Cooper explicitly notes that Iran's tactical fighters are not flying, how is this not just over?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, how does a military even function at that point? If you take away the traditional pillars of state power, like the ships and the jets, aren't they completely immobilized?
It's the illusion of conventional defeat.
Illusion.
Yeah. When you eliminate a navy and ground an air force, you have successfully degraded their conventional state-on-state warfighting capability. They can no longer project power across the ocean and they cannot contest the airspace.
Right.
But neutralizing a conventional military does not mean you have stopped the conflict. In fact, it often pushes the adversary into a much more unpredictable corner.
So surviving a decimated navy doesn't mean no one is fighting anymore.
Exactly.
In fact, looking at the on-the-ground reality, the cost of this campaign has been absolutely devastating. And it reveals a massive paradox in the metrics of success here.
The contrast in the data is incredibly sharp.
Right. So let's lay out the metrics of diminished capabilities first. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and General Dan Kane, who's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, they reported in early March that Iranian ballistic missile attacks had decreased by 90%.
That's huge.
And drone attacks had fallen by 83% since the start of the operation.
Right. So from a purely tactical standpoint, a 90% reduction tells you the bunker-busting strategy is working.
Right.
The bombers are hitting the manufacturing plants and the storage facilities effectively enough to severely choke off the supply of heavy munitions.
Here's where it gets really interesting, or frankly, just sobering.
Yeah.
Because despite that 90% drop in missile capabilities, the campaign has exacted a severe toll.
It has.
CENTCOM spokesman Captain Tim Hawkins reported that as of March 24th, at least 13 U.S. service members have been killed and 290 wounded.
Right.
And the human cost extends so far beyond just the military.
The human rights group HR Anna reported that at least 1,443 Iranian civilians have been killed in this campaign. Tragically, that includes 217 children.
Oh, wow. It is an immense human tragedy.
Yeah, it is.
It underscores the sobering reality that, quote-unquote, precision military strikes are not immaculate.
No, not at all.
When you are dropping munitions on intelligence facilities or command centers that are located in populated areas, the civilian toll is devastating.
Right.
But there is another piece of data in this report that sort of shatters the narrative of total U.S. victory. Despite their Navy being wiped out and despite an 83% drop in drones, Iran is escalating its attacks.
Yeah, they are.
The source notes they are launching missile and drone strikes against U.S. facilities in Israel, and they are actively escalating attacks against Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you are really watching the mechanics of asymmetrical warfare play out in real time.
But how do you escalate attacks against neighboring countries when your heavy capabilities are down 90%?
Because asymmetrical warfare is specifically designed to survive the destruction of heavy infrastructure. Think of it less like a traditional military hierarchy and more like a decentralized computer network.
Right.
The U.S. just bombed the centralized server farm, right? The IRGC command centers the massive missile silos, the naval fleet.
Right, the big obvious no's.
Exactly. And you might think you have shut down the network, but you haven't. You have just forced all the individual nodes, like the localized militant cells, the proxy groups, the smaller operational units, to act autonomously.
Oh, it becomes like a peer-to-peer mesh network of militants.
Precisely. They are cut off from central command, so they use whatever hidden decentralized stockpiles they have left.
That remaining 10% of ballistic missiles.
Right, and the 17% of drones. And because they can no longer reach across the ocean to strike a carrier group, they aim those remaining weapons at closer, softer regional targets.
Oh, I see.
That is exactly why you see escalations in neighboring Gulf Arab states like Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait. Those targets are within reach of the surviving autonomous nodes.
So you haven't removed the threat, you've just decentralized it and made it wildly unpredictable.
Exactly.
Which brings us to a part of the report that gives you absolute whiplash.
Yeah.
Yeah, the diplomacy stuff.
Right, we have this sprawling military operation, thousands of targets, destroyed autonomous cells, escalating attacks across the Gulf, and then you look at the political communications.
The diplomatic landscape is just a tangle of direct contradictions right now.
Let's track the timeline the KULT report provides. On March 23rd, President Donald Trump declared that the United States and Iran had begun, quote, productive talks toward a resolution.
Right.
But almost immediately, senior Iranian officials firmly denied that claim on the exact same day.
Very public high-level denial, too.
But then on March 24th today, reports emerged that Iran actually did receive a message from the United States. And this message was delivered through mediators potentially paving the way for formal dialogue. So there is a quiet back channel operating underneath the public denials.
The diplomatic machinery is definitely moving in the shadows.
But wait, it gets crazier.
Of course it does.
While we have these reports of back-channel mediators and productive talks, CENTCOM simultaneously indicates that the military attacks will continue unabated.
And the New York Times is reporting that U.S. military leaders are considering deploying a brigade of approximately 3,000 troops from the 82nd Airborne Division to Iran.
Wow.
Specifically to potentially seize control of Karg Island.
Deploying the 82nd Airborne to seize an island is a massive escalation. I mean, it shifts a campaign of aerial bombardment and naval destruction into the realm of a literal ground invasion.
So what does this all mean? How can leaders claim to be having productive talks and utilizing mediators on the exact same day that military planners are reportedly preparing to drop 3,000 paratroopers onto Iranian territory?
It's jarring.
As a listener trying to follow the news,
Yeah.
It feels completely detached from reality.
This raises an important question about how international conflict is actually managed behind the scenes. What you are describing, the simultaneous whisper of peace and the booming threat of a ground invasion, is a classic geopolitical strategy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's known as the dual-track approach.
Explain how a dual-track approach functions when the signals are this contradictory.
Well, the contradictions are kind of the point. In a dual-track strategy, maximum military pressure is applied at the exact same time as quiet back-channel mediation.
Okay.
The military threat isn't an accident. Leaking to the New York Times that 3,000 troops from the 82nd Airborne might seize Karg Island, which is a critical hub for Iranian oil exports, by the way, is a carefully calibrated threat.
I see.
It is a way of saying to the adversary, if these mediated talks fail here, is the immediate catastrophic consequence for your economy and your sovereignty.
So you weaponize uncertainty.
Exactly.
You keep the adversary completely off balance because they don't know if they're about to get a ceasefire agreement or 3,000 paratroopers dropping from the sky to take their oil infrastructure.
You project overwhelming force publicly while negotiating through mediators privately. You turn up the heat militarily to force concessions at the negotiating table.
Right.
But for the public watching this unfold, it creates exactly the whiplash you described. We are watching the public pressure tactics and the private diplomatic maneuvers collide in real time, and it just looks like chaos.
Wow. So as we pull all of these threads together, let's recap the journey we've just taken through this fact sheet.
Sure.
We have explored a truly historic, multi-domain military campaign. Operation Epic Fury has utilized an entire ecosystem of weaponry, from F-22 stealth fighters to nuclear submarines, to neutralize 9,000 targets and essentially eliminate a national navy in just 24 days.
And the scale of that destruction has heavily diminished conventional Iranian capabilities, blinding their command structures and halting their heavy supply chains.
Right. But that tactical dominance has resulted in immense human tragedy, with over 1,000 civilian casualties reported.
Yeah.
And it has birthed a geopolitical standoff that is shifting by the hour, forcing decentralized militant networks to escalate asymmetrical retaliations across the entire Gulf region.
The data paints a stark picture, really.
Yeah.
Destroying the machinery of a military does not instantly extinguish the will or the capacity of decentralized factions to fight back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And connecting this back to you, the listener, whether you are watching the nightly news, tracking global energy markets, or just trying to be well-informed about the state of the world right now, understanding this gap is vital.
It really is.
The gap between staggering military statistics like a 90% drop in ballistic missiles and actual on-the-ground diplomatic resolution is where the real complexity of global affairs lives.
Right.
The numbers on a CENTCOM fact sheet do not automatically equal peace.
No, they don't. The transition from the battlefield to the negotiating table, navigating that dual-track approach of threats and mediation, is often the most dangerous and volatile phase of any conflict.
Which brings us back to where we started. We talked at the beginning about the sheer velocity of modern warfare.
Right.
We see 15 combat missions an hour tearing down infrastructure in weeks that took decades to build.
Yeah.
It is an incredible, terrifying display of logistical and destructive power, but it leaves us with one final deeply provocative thought to ponder. If a modern superpower can orchestrate a campaign that destroys 9,000 targets, wipes out an entire navy, and establishes total air superiority in just 24 days. Wait, sorry, let me rephrase that. If they can do all that, but all of that unprecedented technological power still doesn't force an immediate end to the conflict, and it still can't stop decentralized regional attacks.
Right.
What does that actually reveal about the limits of pure technological and aerial dominance in modern warfare?
That is a great question.
Something to mull over as the headlines continue to unfold and the mediators continue to work in the shadows. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.